let's kind of get into like his departure, what LSU needs to do here as far as like from a recruiting standpoint, who they hire, what is the model going to look like? But man, I got to start with the top. The kid who LSU fans were basically begging to stay, and that's five-star defensive lineman Lamar Brown, who LSU beat the Aggies for his commitment, obviously, and A&M beat the brakes off LSU in Tiger Stadium on Saturday night. What are we thinking there?
Well, Lamar Brown is by far one of the most unique players I've ever scouted. I've said it in the past. Like, he's got round one ceiling as an offensive lineman and round one ceiling as a defensive lineman. We legitimately are probably going to list him as a 285-pound athlete, and that's a 285-pound athlete that could finish as the number one player in the country. I think everyone sees defensive line. With that being said, Bud, watched his cut-ups late last night. Lamar Brown's playing a lot more offense than he is defense here as a senior. He's at University Lab High School. That is in the shadows of LSU.
Like literally.
But they scrimmaged like a preseason action was inside LSU's IPF. Like, you see Lamar Brown out there throwing people around, and there's a Tiger logo right below him. With that being said, go back to the summer before Lamar Brown made his decision. There was a lot of people in College Station that felt optimistic. They felt like, they led in the recruitment. They thought up until, the hour before Lamar Brown put on that huge oversized LSU hat on SportsCenter that, they might pick up that pledge. So for LSU, I mean, disaster of a scenario, I think on Saturday, obviously, losing, right? But if you want to take a step back and look at the big picture, the recruiting section inside Tiger Stadium was loaded, right? It was a who's who. Lamar Brown, as you pointed out, was there, but there was a ton of other 5- and 4-star prospects. And what did they see in the second half? They saw fans booing, right? It was not a good environment. So I don't know if Texas A&M is going to turn up the heat on Lamar Brown. I think they've kind of made their pitch here. Hey, we developed defensive linemen. I think that was very clear Saturday night. We have more stability, and we're going to potentially play for a national championship. I think everything that Texas A&M sold Lamar Brown on has rung true, and everything that they probably negatively recruited towards LSU has probably also rung true. So we'll see what happens. I think this one will go down to the wire, and I think a lot of it's going to hinge on who LSU tabs as Brian Kelly's replacement. The best in the boot, stay in the boot. It's a very, very weird state in the sense that, like, Nick Saban is the only coach that I think has had that really had sustained success of going into Louisiana and pulling guys away from LSU. There's a lot of pressure for those kids to stay home. LSU was Lamar Brown's first scholarship offer. Again, probably doesn't have to change much of his morning routine going from University Lab to classes at LSU. So one to certainly track. And I think if there's a team to watch, it's definitely Texas A&M.
I muted myself. Oops. Like I totally agree on that. Like if you look at this, I mean, I think they're going to have a good shot to hold on to them because like you can't lose this kid, right? Like the new coach coming in has got to say, hey, whatever it takes, back up the Brinks truck. Let's just get this one done, right? And you probably have to overpay a little bit, but it's just such a bad look if you're the new coach coming in. You just cannot afford to lose the kid in your backyard there.
And the other thing too, Bud, is like, again, I think opinions are a little split on where you position Lamar Brown. Like, now, is there a scenario where we could have like Lamar Brown be a Travis Hunter and he gets snaps on both sides of the ball? Potentially, maybe. I mean, if there was a player that could do it, it's probably Lamar Brown. I mean, we went back and we looked and we tried to find point of attack players that have gone both ways in college. I think one of the only ones I found was Mike Pouncey, former Florida center guard, right? He got some burn on defense at some point during his career just due to injuries and attrition. So I don't know where, the next LSU staff's going to see Lamar Brown. But here's the thing. After watching what took place on Saturday night inside Tiger Stadium, I don't think it matters where you line him up because he's going to be a difference maker. The other thing on top of this, Bud, is it's not just Lamar Brown, right? LSU has one of the top defensive line groups in the country committed. Whoever comes in, they got to hold on to these individuals, because I think that is the root of LSU's problems, right? Up front in the trenches, specifically on the interior. And, LSU brought in a transfer portal class with Pat Payton, Jack Pyburn, a few other guys. Still think, they haven't matched the level of previous, frontline defenders for the Tigers. And, Richard Anderson is a kid out of New Orleans, Edna Carr. He's going to be in the 5-star conversation for us. He's a big stump in the middle, right? And as much as we gush about Lamar Brown, Richard Anderson is going to have a chance to make just as much of an impact up front wherever he ends up. Trenton Henderson, a 5-star edge rusher out of Florida's Panhandle. They got to keep him on board. One of the sleepers they have committed, DeAnthony Lafayette, right here in Orlando, Bud. I think this kid's a stud, right? He's maybe 6 feet tall, but he can rush, crush, and close. And then the other one, Deuce Gerald's out of the Atlanta Metro, just I believe set the GHSA record with 51 career sacks. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Drazon Newton, who was at Illinois, right? He's this, quick twitch interior pass rusher, also plays some running back. So LSU, they got a lot of issues, but I think they need to figure out a way to keep all these defensive linemen in the fold, because they all have multi-year starter upside in the SEC.
Absolutely. So another guy they got to figure out is who the heck's going to play quarterback, because they signed Ricky Collins, who went to Syracuse, and it's just not any good. They signed Colin Hurley. I was never I don't think you totally write off Colin Hurley based on what you saw in high school, because there was some certain physical abilities, but I was usually a little bit underwhelmed relative to some of the hype on him when you saw him at certain events, especially under pressure. They get Van Buren, who had some a nice cup of coffee with Mississippi State last year. Now he's the backup. He had to come in a little bit when Nussmeier got dinged. Is LSU starter for 2026 on their roster? Do they believe in any of these guys? And they also don't have a 2026 high school kid committed right now.
Yeah, as much as I just talked about the problems on the defensive line, that's my big question. What is the plan at quarterback, Bud? And I know you probably know a lot more LSU people than I do, and I just don't see what the plan is for next season and then beyond. And how did this happen? Right? Jaden Daniels won a Heisman Trophy in Baton Rouge not too long ago. Joe Burrow has been there.
Nussmeier's going to get drafted.
Correct. And all these quarterback recruits are attracted to LSU. I don't know if it's a mismanagement. I don't know where, things have gone wrong. Actually, I do, Bud. I mean, Bryce Underwood, they thought they were going to get. It was a Bryce Underwood, and then they get left at the altar. And there didn't seem to really be, a backup plan. And that has bled into the 2026 recruiting cycle. And in 2027, Elijah Haven, 5-star quarterback, our number 2 player in the country, he also goes to school in Baton Rouge. But LSU took a pledge from another quarterback, Peyton Houston, in-state. A guy that can, is a fire hydrant. He can rip it around the yard. He's not the tallest, biggest individual. That's Elijah Haven. But it's just been fascinating to see, how this quarterback room has come together, because I think everything's going to change, right, with whoever steps in. And, to me, they're going to have to go after a transfer if you don't think Van Buren's the guy who, let's give him credit, he is kind of a gamer, right? He's exceeded expectations for me. He's a kid that took a lot of hits at St. Francis Academy, was really good in the Under Armour game. Did not see what he did as a freshman at Mississippi State there, but I think they need a high school guy, and I think they're going to go after one of the top transfers on the market.
I think it makes a ton of sense. They do recruit in-state pretty well. I know opinions on all these in-state Louisiana quarterbacks for 27 are just all over all over the board. You talk to somebody that they like this kid, they don't like that kid. Next guy loves the kid the other guy didn't like. So like, I don't know if there's a developing consensus yet. Like, I know we like Haven. I think we like the makeup. He looked pretty good when we saw him, at the Future 50 event. But at the same time, like, I don't think he's in a, like, Trevor Lawrence can't miss. How in the hell do you let this kid walk out of the state category? Like, he's not at this point in his career. Like, he's not the replacement for Bryce Underwood. Which honestly, if LSU hangs on to Bryce Underwood, I'm pretty sure Brian Kelly's not fired.
Would Bryce Underwood be playing?
That's a great question. So it would sort of depend on, like, how hurt is Nussmeier, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's not very effective right now. I mean, he's playing a little bit better. I think he's probably a little bit healthier, but I do think maybe at certain points in the year, Underwood would have received snaps. But also, I think there would be pressure to play Underwood in a way that, like, Van Buren is not like a super high level talent. Like, there's not a lot of pressure to play him. Like, nobody in the fan base, there's no big donor out there be like, hey man, I paid all this money for Van Buren. I better see him get some snaps if Nussmeier is going to be hurt and not playing very well, right? With Underwood, there certainly would be. Like, I think if you got a kid that talented, like, the risk of making a coaching move is really risky if you're worried about losing the kid, right? It's probably why Sharon's going to get another year at in Ann Arbor, despite them not really looking anything special this year. You just can't afford to fire the coach and have the kid transfer out. I think he would still have the job if they kept Underwood. Now, maybe the defense wouldn't be improved because they had to spend their NIL money on Underwood and not on the transfer portal defense. But it's an interesting kind of hypothetical to ponder for sure.
Yeah, we used to always, I think they still do them. Chris Summer at 24/7 Sports, like the big recruiting what ifs.
Oh, Tebow to Alabama, obviously.
Yeah,
always, right.
But hey, this is shaping up to be a big one. The Bryce Underwood. The same thing, like Dylan Raiola to Nebraska. Like, what if he went to Georgia? What does Matt Rule look like in kind of year 3 there? Yeah, it's these quarterback. I mean, we call them quarterback dominoes, but that's really what they are because it changes the trajectory of the entire college football